I just had no idea what the next day would even look like for me. And I've never been more desperate for God's intervention in my life.
Rewrite.
Rewrite. New life, new beginning.
Hey, I'm Jonathan Unthank. Welcome to another edition of the Rewrite Podcast, joined today by Evelyn Cormier. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's good to meet you officially.
I know, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Now, I have to tell you, my middle daughter's name is Evelyn, so this is special. This is a special day. That's awesome. Well, tell me a little bit about yourself. This is actually our first time meeting, and
Yes.
I'd love to get to know you a little bit, and then we'll just talk about Jesus and your story and how he is filtered all throughout the theme of him in your story.
Yeah, well, I have been all over the place, but my home base now is New Hampshire. I've been born and raised here. I love New England. I have a heart for New England. There's a really big need for Christians in New England and Christians to stay here and like raise families here. And so I definitely feel like that's a big calling on my life. So even though I've lived in Nashville and LA and different places, I knew I wanted to settle here in New Hampshire. I'm almost 9 months pregnant right
Wow.
now with my first baby.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then my husband and I are fixing up an old farmhouse on 30 acres of land. So it's a blast right now. Like I'm definitely in a season of God's abundance and blessings and his restoration truly in my life. And that's just a little bit about where I'm at now. I'm signed to BEC Recordings, and they're an awesome label, and so it's been great to figure out, okay, I'm planning on staying based here. I don't want to be all over the place. I'll travel, I'll do whatever, but this is where I want to be, and it's been amazing to just make music about Jesus and make music that I'm really excited about, and then also being able to live out the calling that I feel that God's put before me.
That's awesome. So growing up, you've always lived in New England, from the
Oh yeah.
very beginning.
Yeah.
Cool. So what was your childhood like? I mean, with music, was it something that you grew into, or was it like, out of the womb, it's like you're singing a song?
Yeah, I mean, definitely out of the womb, I had a very immediate fascination with music, specifically the violin. And so my parents, they wanted to be supportive and kind of like lean into that. And so I ended up playing violin for almost 7 years of my life. I could not play a lick of anything for you right now if you handed me a violin. Um, but by the time I was 10, I knew I wanted to be a singer. And so my parents have always been very supportive as far as, lean into what the Lord's calling you to, and they've come alongside me so much. But it's just been it's so interesting to see because I did grow up in church. So I grew up with parents who were, we were listening to church music, but my parents also were very young when I was born. And so we were listening to stuff like, my dad was 21 when I was born. So whatever he was listening to, whatever they were growing up on in the 80s and 90s, like I was raised on all that stuff. So I feel like there's a
Yes.
culmination of music that I've been raised
Yes.
on.
Okay, so help me out here. So 80s, 90s, I mean, that's my vibe too. So what's your go-to?
Cranberries, Crowded House, The Cure, Dinosaur Jr., sometimes some Stevie Nicks. It's just kind of mixing. I feel like there's just a lot. Like I can't pinpoint one particular genre of music. I've just really enjoyed a lot of like I love 90s acoustic-y stuff. Like, a girl, a vocalist and a guitar, um, like Lisa Loeb or that kind of stuff. It's just that's my vibe. I feel like, and I've even stayed kind of in that lane where I very much enjoy being a vocalist and a guitar, even to this day.
So have you gone to YouTube or anything and like just search for like MTV Unplugged?
Oh yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's what I try to channel every time I
Come
have a
on.
show or a concert. Like I'm like, how can we make this more MTV Unplugged?
Yeah. Oh man, you're bringing me back now. That was my teenage years. Oh yeah. I mean, so you're a kid of the '90s. Grew up. Early 2000s, and then launched into just following music and what the Lord prepared for you to do. Then comes an opportunity for American Idol and other things like that. How did that all come about?
Yeah, I have never been somebody that has wanted to be on American Idol or do anything like that. I think people might be surprised. I think a lot of artists are actually pretty introverted, and I am very introverted. I very much enjoy being alone, not being on stage, not having the spotlight on me. But God has kind of brought me into a position where this is something that I am doing a lot. And it's definitely pushes me out of my comfort zone. But when people would tell me you need to be on American Idol or you should audition for The Voice or something like that, I'd be like, you know what? That's not for me. And if God wants me on those shows, then, he'll come to my door. The show will come to my door. And they're like, well, that's not how American Idol works. And I said, guess that means I'm not gonna be on American Idol. And so one day I was sitting on my couch watching a TV show or whatever, and I got a message on Instagram from a casting producer from American Idol asking me to do a private audition in New York City. And I knew immediately that I'm like, okay, they came to me. I've told everybody if they come to me that I got to do it. But so I did, and that's what got the ball rolling. And that was just a crazy experience in all the good ways and all the bad, just everything. It was just a crazy experience for sure.
So you had that in your mind, like, okay, they got to reach out to me before I take the next step. Now, was this just it was just a random message, or was
Yep.
it some? Wow,
Random message, somebody I've never met before. They still do like the cattle call auditions
sure.
and stuff, but they also have social media people who are like searching and scouting the internet and Instagram and stuff for people who sing. And so that's what happened. So,
That's amazing. You can see God's handiwork all throughout
yeah.
that.
Yep.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Well, tell me a little bit how you came to faith in Jesus. You grew up with music and just your love for the Lord and things like that. How did you come to faith in Jesus? What did that look like?
Yeah. No, I mean, I did grow up in the church. My parents were believers, which, I'm obviously very blessed. A lot of people, including my husband, didn't grow up in a Christian home. And I always knew, like, it was always a priority for my parents, and I noticed this very early on. Their priority, it wasn't for us to become doctors and astronauts or whatever. Like, they were very concerned with our relationship with Christ and where we stand and are we following God's will in our lives and whatever that looked like for our careers. They weren't concerned about our higher education as much as they were concerned about, our hearts and where we lie with God. And so I just understood like this was clearly something very important. And I feel like I definitely became a believer by the time I was 7. I really believe like I understood that, but I don't feel like the rubber met the road until I was about 22 years old. And wow, I'm trying to think back. I'm 27 for reference. So several years ago, and I ended up going through just the worst, most devastating time of my life where I just had no idea what the next day would even look like for me. And like, I've never been more desperate for God's intervention in my life and wondering like, what does, this circumstance in my life now do to my testimony? What does this do for my Christian music? What does this do even just in my life in general? And so I was so dependent on God every hour where it's like I don't know if you've experienced just this desperation that we have to be in communication with God during these times in our lives. And then the feeling of, okay, God does step in. He always takes care of us. But then after that, sometimes it feels like that intimacy that we have with him kind of just, takes a back seat. Life is good, whatever, but it just draws you in. And so I really believe like that time in my life that God used to just draw me to him and to hone in the calling that he had on my life, especially in Christian music. I wasn't in Christian music at the time either. And so that's kind of in a nutshell a little bit about my faith journey, but growing all the time and learning more about God's character, the more life you live through and the more hardships come. And yeah,
You found him faithful throughout the years.
yes.
That's awesome. So now that you are almost ready to bring a new life into this world, how does that does that feel now from the faith aspect of like, wow, I'm responsible now, just like my parents were responsible,
Yeah.
and laid that foundation for me. How does that feel for you right now?
To me, it feels like the biggest like burden in a good way. Like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like it's the biggest calling on my life. Obviously, something I've been talking about a lot lately with different Christians and artists and stuff is that, I believe that if God has given you a spouse and if he's given you kids, then those are your first callings. And then everything else comes secondary. And so just trying to find the balance of like, okay, the life that I live with music and trying to figure out what it's going to look like if I'm going on a fall tour this season. I have a newborn baby, but it's like I want to prioritize my family and my husband, and I want to just I think it's important that people see that, I think it's really important to prioritize family and what God's put in front of you like that. So yeah, I'm just excited. I'm blessed. Like I said, this is a season of restoration for me. Like in every aspect, it's hard to even put into words just how much God has touched every area of my life and turned it around. And so I just feel just an overwhelming blessing season in my life.
That's awesome. That is so good. So you've got a new song, "Leaning
Yeah.
on Jesus." Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that and how that
Yeah.
fits into your world right now.
Yeah. So when I wrote Leaning on Jesus, it was pretty fresh off the coattails. So basically one of the most difficult times in my life, I ended up, which I never expected, like it was just a crazy time. I ended up going through a really messy divorce at 22 years old. And so I had to pack up my dad flew out to Los Angeles. He had to pack up all my belongings with me. My whole life seemed like it was just ripped from under me. And I moved in with my parents. And I just remember feeling like, during that time, so just broken, so broken. And like, I felt like I had an emotional breakdown, and my father had to step in and really take over a lot of things for me and help me with a lot of things. And I remember thinking at the time that this is a really good example of what God does as a father in our lives. And so when I was in the writing room, that's kind of the idea of what we were writing about. The song is really about who God is to us as a father. And so it has been so interesting because I wrote that song maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it just now is seeing the light of day. And so I'm in a very different season of my life where I am in a season of restoration and blessing. And so I can sing the song in a new perspective. And so I'm so grateful actually that the song is out when it is, where I'm at in life too, because being able to share my testimony with people and being on the other side of that testimony too, I think is really powerful and really just a cool way to be able to witness to people who are still not on the other side, still waiting for that hope, waiting for that restoration, and being encouraged.
That's so good. So good.
Thank you.
One of the questions that I ask everyone who is a part of the Rewrite podcast is
Yeah.
there's a character trait of God, so to speak, that we see rise to the top when it comes to where we are in life right now.
Yep.
Is there something that just comes to mind? You're like, okay, God, this is who you are to me right now.
Yeah, I mean, just God as a restorer.
This is Rewrite, Stories of New Life in Jesus. I'm Jonathan Unthank. If you'd like to join a community of listeners who enjoy hearing the life stories of Christian music artists and influencers, then join the Rewrite text group by texting the word Rewrite. That's REWRITE to 81891. But more importantly, if you'd like to dig deeper into your own relationship with Jesus, you can begin that journey today by texting his name, Jesus, to 81891. God bless you. Join me next time for another episode of Rewrite.